Far above your head, past the clouds, past the blue, there is a cold gray world that has been circling us for 4.5 billion years. And after 50 years of silence, we are about to go back and stay. Tonight, we are going to explore the most detailed plan NASA has ever drawn for living on the moon. A blueprint they revealed in the spring of 2026. And the strange machines they intend to send ahead of us. There are rocket-powered drones that hop across the dark side of mountains. A rover the size of a small apartment where astronauts will ride in shirt sleeves for days. And a furnace that melts moon dust into something like wet cement. And what NASA admits about this plan is stranger than the plan itself. How do you keep a machine alive through a night that lasts 2 of our weeks and falls to more than 300 degrees below zero? How do you build a home on a place where there is no air to breathe, no water to drink, and no ground that has ever felt a human footprint? And why, after half a century of staying home, is NASA suddenly racing the clock, racing another nation, and racing its own history, until you finally understand that the moon was never really the point at all? If you find a quiet comfort in drifting off to the strange wonders of distant worlds, you might gently tap the like button, or follow along, so that more of these long, calm journeys can find their way to you in the dark. Let your shoulders drop, and let us begin. Let us start with the moon itself, because before there were plans and budgets and rockets, there was only that pale light in the sky. For as long as there have been people, there has been the moon. And for almost all of that time, it was simply something to look at. It guided sailors across dark oceans. It set the rhythm of planting and harvest. It filled and emptied like a slow silver tide, and it gave us the very idea of a month, a measure of time older than any clock. Every human being who has ever lived has stood under the same moon you can see tonight, and almost none of them ever dreamed it could be touched. It is about 240,000 miles away. That number is so large it slides right off the mind, so let us slow it down. If you could somehow drive a car straight up into the sky at highway speed and never stop, never sleep, never pause for fuel, it would take you around 5 months to reach the moon. Light itself, the fastest thing there is, makes the trip in a little over 1 second. When you look up at that gentle glowing disk, you are seeing it not quite as it is, but as it was a heartbeat and a quarter ago. It is close enough to see with the naked eye, and far enough to swallow every ship we have ever built into a journey of days. Perhaps, the next clear night, you will step outside and look up at it for a moment, the way people have always done. It will look exactly as it has always looked, calm and silver, and impossibly far. But knowing what you will know by the end of tonight, you may find that it looks a little different too, because somewhere on that pale disk, down at the very bottom where you cannot see, there are craters full of ancient ice, and there are plans, real plans, to send machines and then people to live among them. The moon you grew up with was a thing to gaze at and wonder about. The moon of the coming years is becoming a place with a future, a destination with a calendar, somewhere that human beings intend, this time, to stay. That same gentle light, so familiar, so unchanging, is about to become the most closely watched piece of ground beyond the Earth itself. For most of human history, no one even knew what the moon truly was. To the ancient eye, it was a lamp, a goddess, a face, a god, 1,000 different things in 1,000 different stories told around 1,000 different fires. It took a very long time for us to understand the plain and astonishing truth, which is that the moon is a world, a real place, with mountains and valleys and plains, a place you could, in principle, walk across, if only you could get there and breathe. And the most likely story of how it came to be is more violent and more beautiful than any myth. Long ago, when the Earth was young and still half molten, another body about the size of the planet Mars is thought to have struck us a glancing, world-shattering blow. From the glowing wreckage thrown up by that collision, a ring of debris gathered itself together in orbit and slowly cooled and clumped into the moon. The moon, in this telling, is a piece of the early Earth, flung into the sky and frozen there, a child of our own world, keeping us company through the long dark. And it is a strange and silent child. The moon has almost no air at all, only the faintest whisper of gas. So thin it is hardly worth the name. There is no wind. There is no weather. There is no sound. Because sound needs air to travel through. And so the surface of the moon is wrapped in a silence more complete than any you have ever known. The sky there is black even in the middle of the day, with the sun burning fiercely in the blackness and the stars unable to twinkle. The ground is covered in a fine gray powder called regolith, built up over billions of years as countless tiny meteorites, some no bigger than grains of sand, rained down and shattered the rock into dust. And because there is no wind and no water to wear them away, the footprints the astronauts left behind will last not for years, but for millions of years, slowly erased only by that same patient rain of tiny stones. There is one more gentle strangeness worth knowing. The moon always shows us the same face. It turns on its own axis at exactly the same rate that it circles the Earth, so that one side is forever turned toward us and one side is forever turned away. Every human who has ever lived has seen only that one familiar face, the same dark patches and bright highlands, the same quiet pattern that our ancestors saw and named. The far side, the side we never see from home, remained a complete mystery until the age of spacecraft. A hidden hemisphere kept secret for the whole of human history, simply by the slow and perfect rhythm of the moon's turning. And yet we went there. Between the years of 1969 and 1972, in a burst of effort that still seems almost unbelievable, 12 human beings walked on the surface of the moon. They left footprints in gray dust that has no wind to erase them. Footprints that are still there tonight, perfectly preserved, waiting in the silence. They planted flags. They gathered rocks. They drove a little electric cart across a dead and ancient land, and then, one by one, they came home, and the door closed behind them. The last person to stand on the moon climbed back into his lander in December of 1972, and no one has been back since. Think about that for a moment, gently, without any need to feel sad about it. There are grandparents alive tonight who were children when humans last walked on the moon. There are entire generations, billions of people, who have lived their whole lives under that light and never once seen a living person set foot on it. The moon became, once again, only something to look at. The footprints stayed, the visitors stopped coming, and for half a century, the question hung quietly in the air. Why did we go? And why did we leave? And would we ever, truly, go back? The honest answer is that the first time we went to the moon, we went to win. The journey of the 1960s was born from a contest between two great nations, each wanting to prove that its way of doing things was the future. The moon was the finish line, and once the race was won, the reason to keep running faded away. To do it, the United States built the most powerful machine that had ever flown, a rocket called the Saturn V. It is hard to make the size of that machine feel real. It stood taller than a building of 30 stories, higher than the Statue of Liberty from the bottom of her base to the top of her torch. When its engines lit, they burned through tons of fuel every second and shook the ground for miles around. A controlled explosion so vast that people watching from a safe distance could feel it pressing against their chests. Hundreds of thousands of people, all across the country, gave years of their lives to build it. Factory workers and seamstresses and engineers and mathematicians, most of whom never came near a rocket and never got their names in any story. And on top of that towering machine, 3 human beings sat in a tiny capsule, no bigger than the inside of a small car, and rode the fire all the way to the moon. It was, by almost any measure, the single most ambitious thing our species had ever attempted. And the most extraordinary part is that it worked. The rockets were enormous. The cost was staggering, and once the flag was planted and the world had watched, the urgency drained out of it like water from a cracked cup. We had gone to prove a point, and the point was proven. And so we came home and turned our eyes to other things. But the moon never changed. It kept circling, patient and silent, holding its secrets. And in the long, quiet decades that followed, we slowly began to learn that this gray world we thought we understood was hiding something we never expected to find there. Something that would, one day, give us a reason to return that was far stronger than any race or any flag. To understand that reason, we have to travel to the loneliest place on the whole moon, a place the first astronauts never went, a place of permanent shadow and ancient cold. We have to travel to the lunar South Pole. When those early astronauts landed, they landed near the moon's equator, in the wide sunlit plains where it was safest and simplest to set down. They saw a world that looked, in every direction, completely dry, bone dry, drier than any desert on Earth, drier than dry. A place where the very idea of water seemed like a cruel joke. The moon, everyone agreed, was a dead and waterless rock, and for the most part, across most of its surface. That is true, but the moon, like the Earth, has poles, and at the very bottom of the moon, in deep craters that the sunlight has not touched in billions of years, something remarkable was waiting. To understand why the poles are so different, you have to think about the way the moon sits in space. Our own Earth leans over on its axis, tilted at a generous angle, and that tilt is the reason we have seasons. The reason the sun climbs high in summer and hangs low in winter. But the moon barely leans at all. It sits almost perfectly upright as it circles, and that small difference changes everything. At the poles of the moon, the sun never rises high. It only ever crawls around the horizon, low and pale, the way the midday sun does in the deep of an Arctic winter. And this creates two opposite kinds of magic in the very same place. On the high rims and peaks near the pole, there are spots where that low sun almost never sets at all, places bathed in nearly endless light, where solar panels could drink the sun for weeks on end. And just below them, in the floors of the deep craters, there are spots where the sun has quite literally never reached. Pools of permanent shadow holding the oldest darkness in the solar system. Picture one of these craters, because the moon barely tilts on its axis. The sun at the South Pole never climbs high in the sky. It only ever skims along the horizon, low and weak, the way the winter sun does in the far north of our own world. And down in the bottom of a deep crater, that low sun never reaches at all. The crater floor lives in a darkness that has lasted longer than there have been animals on Earth. No sunlight has fallen there for billions of years. And in that endless dark, the temperature falls to one of the coldest readings ever measured anywhere in our solar system, far colder than the surface of distant Pluto. In a cold trap like that, water does not behave the way it does in your kitchen. There is no liquid, no flowing stream, no glittering pool. Instead, over unimaginable lengths of time, tiny amounts of water, delivered by comets and by the slow chemistry of space, drifted into these freezing shadows and simply stopped. The water froze into the soil itself, mixing with the gray dust until it became a kind of permanently frozen ground. A dirty, ancient ice locked into the rock. For a long time, this was only a suspicion, a thing the scientists thought might be true. And then, little by little, the instruments confirmed it. There is water ice at the poles of the moon, real water, frozen and waiting in the dark. And the moment you understand that, everything changes, because water is not just for drinking, although of course it is for that too. Water is two simple things bound together, oxygen and hydrogen. Pull those two apart, which we know perfectly well how to do, and the oxygen becomes air that a human being can breathe, and the hydrogen becomes fuel that a rocket can burn. Suddenly, the moon is not a dead and useless rock at all. It is a filling station. It is a well in the desert. It is the single most important thing any traveler can find in a hostile land, which is the means to keep going. The water at the South Pole turns the moon from a place you visit into a place you could actually live. So this is the great quiet shift that happened over those 50 years of silence. We stopped thinking of the moon as a finish line, a place to plant a flag and leave, and we began to think of it as a doorway, a first step, a place to learn how to live away from the Earth, using what we find when we get there, so that one day we might go farther still, to Mars and beyond. That is the dream that has been building, slowly and patiently, in the background. And in the spring of 2026, that dream finally turned into a plan. And the plan was unlike anything NASA had ever produced before. But to understand the plan, you first have to understand the moment it was born, because it did not arrive gently. It arrived as a kind of declaration in a room in Washington, on a day when the whole direction of American spaceflight changed in the space of a single word. Let us go to that room now, calmly, and watch it happen. In March of 2026, a man named Jared Isaacman walks onto a stage at NASA headquarters in Washington, the capital of the United States. He is the new administrator of NASA, which means he is the person in charge of the entire American Space Agency. All of its rockets and scientists and dreams behind him on a great screen. There are no charts, no long lists, no complicated diagrams. There is only one word, glowing in the dark of the room. The word is ignition. It is a small word, but it carries a great weight. Ignition is the instant a rocket engine comes to life, the moment the fuel catches fire and the whole towering machine begins to strain against the ground that holds it. It is the beginning of everything, the spark before the rise. And by putting that single word on the screen, Isaacman is saying something simple and direct to the world. The waiting is over. The long pause is finished. We are starting the engines again. Then he begins to speak. And what he says is not the kind of thing space agencies usually say in public. He admits that something has gone wrong. For decades, he explains, NASA has been spread too thin. It has tried to do a little of everything, tried to please everyone, tried to keep every project alive and every supporter happy. And in doing all of that at once, it has often accomplished very little. He talks, plainly, about billions of taxpayer dollars that were spent without enough to show for them, and years of progress that quietly slipped away. It is an unusual thing for a leader to stand up and say, "The old way did not work. We are going to do this differently now." And then he names the reason it all matters so much, the reason it cannot wait any longer. There is a competition. Another great nation, China, is building its own plans for the moon, its own rockets and landers and ambitions, and it intends to plant the first permanent claim on that gray world. This is not like the race of the 1960s, the race of flags and footprints and a single triumphant visit. This time, Isaacman says, the goal is different. This time, the goal is not to go and come back. This time, the goal is to stay. And whoever stays first Whoever builds the first lasting foothold at the South Pole, near that precious water, will shape what the moon becomes for everyone who follows. It is worth understanding why staying first matters so much more than arriving first. In the old race, the prize was a moment, a single televised step, a flag in the dust. And once that moment was claimed, it could never be taken away. But a permanent base is a different kind of prize. The very best places on the moon are few. There are only so many of those high rims that catch the nearly endless sunlight. Only so many craters that hold reachable ice nearby. Only so many spots where the land is gentle enough to build and the resources are rich enough to matter. Whoever settles in those choice places first will have the warmth and the water and the high ground. And everyone who comes later will have to make do with whatever is left. It is the difference between being the first to visit a country and being the first to build a town beside its only well. The first race was about glory. This new one is about place. And place, once taken, tends to stay taken. That is why the calendar suddenly matters so much, and why the years ahead are being counted so carefully. Now, you might think to yourself, we have heard words like this before, and you would be right. For decades, administrators and politicians have stood at podiums and promised the moon, sometimes literally. Words are easy. Words are cheap. A grand vision announced with great confidence can melt away the moment the budgets are written and the hard choices arrive. NASA has been especially good at the announcing and especially poor at the achieving. And the people who follow these things have learned, over many disappointments, to be patient and a little doubtful. The history of the Artemis moon program, the program meant to take us back, had until this point been a history of beautiful goals and slipping deadlines. And behind every one of those slipping deadlines were people, real people, who never stopped believing. This is the quiet human story underneath all the rockets and budgets, and it is a story of patience tested almost past bearing. There are engineers who joined the program young and watched their hair go gray, waiting for a launch that kept retreating into the future. There are scientists who built instruments with their own hands, machines as fine and clever as anything ever made, and then watched them sit in clean rooms for years, finished and tested and going nowhere, while the schedule slipped again and again. We will meet one of those waiting machines later, a little rover that sat ready for years. Imagine devoting the best part of your working life to a dream that the world keeps postponing, holding on through doubt and delay and the quiet fear that it might never happen at all. The new plan, whatever else it is a kind of vindication for those people. It is the moment the waiting is finally given a date. And there is something deeply human in that, in the patience of people who keep faith with a far-off goal, long after the cameras have lost interest, simply because they believe it is worth doing. But this time, along with the words, there is something that has been missing for a very long time. There is an actual plan, A detailed plan, a step-by-step blueprint that lays out, year by year and mission by mission, exactly how the United States intends to return to the moon and build a place to live there. Better late than never, as the old saying goes. And it begins, perhaps surprisingly, by tearing up the old schedule and rebuilding it from the ground up. To see why that matters, we have to understand what was broken about the old way and how the new plan quietly fixes it. And here's the problem the old plan had, told simply. There was a mission called Artemis 2, which is a careful test flight. A crew would ride a spacecraft called Orion around the moon and back, not landing, just flying out and home again, to prove that the ship and its life support could carry people safely through that long, cold journey. It is worth pausing on what that journey actually is, because we say it so quickly. Orion is a small, cone-shaped capsule, not much roomier than the old Apollo ships, and to throw it toward the moon takes a rocket nearly as mighty as the giants of the Golden Era. A towering machine that strains and burns and falls away in stages until only the little capsule and its crew are left, coasting outward. The trip to the moon takes about 3 days. 3 days of falling through nothing, watching the Earth shrink behind you from a great blue world that fills the window, to a ball you could cover with your thumb, to a small bright marble hanging alone in the dark. There is no road to pull over on, no air to glide through, no way to stop. You simply fall toward the moon and trust the arithmetic that was worked out before you left, to do all of that safely, with human lives aboard. You test it first, gently, one careful step at a time. That part made good sense. But then the old plan asked for an enormous leap. The very next crewed mission, Artemis 3, was supposed to jump all the way from that gentle test flight to landing human beings on the surface of the moon, using a completely separate landing vehicle that had never carried anyone anywhere. Think about how large that leap really is. It is like teaching someone to ride a bicycle around the block, and then, for their second ever ride, asking them to race down a mountain on a machine they have never sat on before. The gap between the test and the goal was simply too wide. The risk was enormous. And because the risk was enormous, the mission kept being pushed back. Every year the date slipped a little further into the future. A can kicked down the road again and again, because no one could honestly say the leap was safe to make. The schedule was not really a schedule at all. It was a promise that kept running away. So the new plan does something clever and humble. It takes Artemis 3, the mission that was supposed to land on the moon, and it turns it into a dress rehearsal. Instead of landing, the crew will practice all the most dangerous parts of a landing while staying safely close to home, in low Earth orbit, just a few hundred miles up, where rescue is possible and mistakes are survivable. This sounds, at first, like going backward. We said the goal was to move faster, and now we are saying the first big mission will not even reach the moon, but it is not backward at all. It is the difference between rushing and arriving. Here is what that rehearsal will look like. The Orion spacecraft, carrying its crew, will launch and settle into orbit around the Earth. And there, In that orbit, it will meet a second vehicle, the lunar lander, the machine that is meant to one day carry people down to the surface. The two craft will perform a careful dance called a rendezvous and docking, drifting slowly toward one another across the black until they touch and lock together, gently, like two hands meeting in the dark. Then the crew will float through the connection, out of Orion and into the lander, and they will test everything that a real moon landing would demand of it. They will test the life support, the systems that make air and manage water and keep the cabin from becoming too hot or too cold. They will test the communications, the radios that carry a human voice across the void. They will test the propulsion, the engines that would one day lower the ship onto the gray dust and lift it off again. And if all of that goes well, they may even open the airlock and try on the new lunar spacesuits, the suits designed for walking on the moon, putting them through their first real test in the vacuum of space. It is easy to overlook a spacesuit, to think of it as mere clothing, but a suit for the moon is really a spacecraft of its own, shrunk down to fit a single human body. It must hold breathable air at the right pressure, so that the person inside does not swell and fail in the vacuum. It must carry its own supply of oxygen and scrub away the breath the wearer exhales. It must keep a body from cooking in the harsh sun on one side and freezing in the deep shadow on the other, sometimes both at the very same moment. It must bend and flex enough to let someone kneel and reach and gather and walk, while resisting the clinging, scratching dust that ruined the suits of the Apollo crews. The suits worn long ago are decades out of date, and so a new generation has had to be designed almost from scratch. And testing them in orbit, before ever trusting them on the surface, is one more way the new plan chooses to be careful where the old plan chose to gamble. A person in one of these suits is, in a real sense, wearing their entire world. Every breath and every degree of warmth carried with them in a fragile bundle of fabric and machinery. All that stands between a living body and the killing emptiness just beyond the cloth. And all of this happens where it is safe. Doing it in low Earth orbit means that if something does not work as expected, problems can be solved and lives can be saved. You learn the dangerous lessons close to home before you carry them out into the deep. Now, there is a question hiding inside all of this, and it is a fascinating one. We know the Orion spacecraft well. It has been built and tested and flown, but this lunar lander, the machine that meets Orion in orbit, is still something of a mystery. For many years, almost everyone assumed it would be a special moon version of a giant rocket called Starship, built by the company SpaceX, which had won the contract to build it back in 2022. That seems settled, but under the new direction at NASA, nothing is quite so settled anymore. Isaac Mann has confirmed that a second company, Blue Origin, is back in the race, with a lander of their own that they call Blue Moon. So now there are two machines built by two rival companies, and one or both of them will be put to the test on Artemis 3. And which one actually carries the first crew to the surface will depend on a single thing, not on who won a contract years ago, not on promises or reputations. It will depend on who can actually get the job done in time. This is the heart of the new direction, and it is a sharp one. Even a company as famous and capable as SpaceX can be put on notice. Winning a contract is not the same as winning a moon landing. The only thing that matters now is execution, and the first company to deliver will be the one that sends American astronauts back to the surface of the moon. With the rehearsal moved safely into Earth orbit, the rest of the schedule suddenly snaps into focus, and it moves with a speed that would have seemed impossible only a short while ago. The deadline for that Artemis 3 rehearsal is pulled forward to the very next year, 2027. And once a lander has proven itself, the winning company is expected to keep moving at a breathless pace. They will have only a few months to test their vehicle in an uncrewed landing on the moon, with no people aboard, just to prove it can reach the surface and survive. And then to turn that proven design straight into the next mission. That next mission is Artemis 4, now scheduled for early 2028, and this is the one. This is when America returns to the surface of the moon, with a crewed landing in the South Pole region, right there near the ancient ice in the shadowed craters. After more than 50 years, human boots will touch the gray dust again. And this time they will touch it in the one place on the whole moon that matters most for staying. But remember what Isaac Man said. This is not about flags and footprints. So to make that point unmistakable to the entire watching world, NASA does not plan to land once and pause. They plan to land again, with Artemis 5, before the end of that same year, 2028. 2 crewed landings in a single year. It sounds almost reckless when you first hear it. Far too ambitious for an agency that has struggled for years just to set a date. But this is not new. This is, in fact, a return to how NASA operated in its golden era, the time when it truly knew how to move. Consider this. The gap between the very first moon landing, Apollo 11, and the second one, Apollo 12, was not years. It was not even 1 year. It was just 120 days. About 4 months. They landed humans on the moon, brought them safely home, and did it all again before the leaves had finished turning. The new plan is reaching back to that old confidence, that old tempo, and it is more than a show of strength. It is meant to set a lasting rhythm. A crew arriving on the surface of the moon once every 6 months, again and again, on and on. Let us slow down for a moment and simply imagine that first return, the landing of Artemis 4, because it is the quiet heart of this whole story, and it deserves to be felt rather than rushed. Picture the lander with its crew aboard, separating from the rest of the ship high above the South Pole and beginning its long, slow fall toward the surface. There is no roar this time, no fire visible against a blue sky. Only the silent press of the engines slowing the descent through that airless black. Below, the landscape rises to meet them. Not the gentle gray plains of Apollo, but a rugged country of ancient craters and long shadows, lit by a low sun that throws every ridge into sharp relief. The crew watches the ground come up, slowly, slowly. the dust beginning to stir and scatter beneath them as the engines breathe against the surface. And then, with the softest of settling, the legs touch down, and for the first time in more than 50 years, a human machine carrying human beings comes to rest on the moon. For a moment, perhaps. No one speaks. The engines fall quiet. The dust drifts back down in the gentle gravity, far more slowly than it ever would on Earth, settling like the calmest snow. And out there, just beyond the window, in craters that have waited in darkness since before there was anything alive to wait, the ice is still holding its ancient secret, closer now than it has ever been to the warm and curious hands of the people who came so far to find it. And it is right here, at this point in the story, that the whole purpose of the plan begins to shift. Up to now, we have been talking about getting there, about landings and rehearsals and rival landers. But landing is only the beginning. The real commitment, the heart of everything, is to build something permanent. A place to live. An outpost that does not pack up and fly home, but stays. Season after lunar season, with people coming and going like the crew of a remote station at the bottom of our own world. And to build that, NASA decides to put surface operations above everything else. This decision means letting go of something that had been part of the plan for a long time. There was to be a space station orbiting the moon, a small outpost circling overhead called Gateway. It was meant to be a waypoint, a place for ships to stop on their way down to the surface. But in the new thinking, a station in orbit is a distraction from the real goal, which is the ground itself. So Gateway, as a moon-orbiting station, is taken off the table. And yet none of the work that went into it is wasted. All of the hardware that had already been designed and built for that orbiting station, the modules and the systems and the carefully solved problems, is being repurposed, folded directly into the design of the first base on the surface. Nothing is thrown away. The orbiting dream simply comes down to land. That base will not appear overnight. It will be built patiently, over 7 years, with a budget of $20 billion set aside to make it real. And the whole effort is divided into 3 great phases, each one building on the last, like laying a foundation before you raise the walls, and raising the walls before you move inside. Let us walk through those 3 phases slowly, the way you might walk through the rooms of a house that is still being built, because this is where the strange and wonderful machines begin to appear. The first phase covers the years from 2026 to 2028, and its single most important goal is almost humble in how practical it is. Before you can build anything on the moon, you have to be able to get to the moon, reliably, again and again, the way a delivery truck reaches a building site. So, this phase is about establishing that steady road through space, what the planners call a high launch cadence. In just 3 years, they intend to send 25 missions toward the moon, with 21 of those actually landing on the surface. Only 2 of those missions carry people. The rest are something even more interesting. They are the careful seeding of a place, the sending ahead of everything a future settlement will need. There is a beautiful logic to sending the machines first, and it is the same logic that has guided every careful expedition into a dangerous place. You do not send people into the unknown empty-handed and hope for the best. You send scouts ahead, you lay in supplies, you build the road before you walk it. So before a single astronaut settles in to stay, a small patient army of robots will go ahead of them, mapping the ground, hunting the ice, leveling the building sites, stockpiling the power and the tools, learning the hard lessons of the cold and the dust, so that the people who follow do not have to learn them the hard way. It is a kind of gift sent forward in time. A future home prepared by machines for visitors who have not yet left the Earth. And there is something quietly moving about that. A fleet of small, brave devices working alone in the silence, far from any living hand. Getting everything ready for the day, the lights of a crude lander finally appear in the black sky above them. They will never know they did it. They will simply do it, faithfully, in the dark, and then go still. And the very first problem those missions must solve is the problem of the dark. We touched on it earlier, but now we have to truly sit with it, because it shapes everything that follows. The moon turns very slowly, so slowly that a single day and night there is not measured in hours, but in our weeks. The Artemis base will bask in about 2 weeks of continuous, unbroken sunlight. The sun creeping low and steady across the sky and never setting. And then it will be plunged into about 2 weeks of continuous, unbroken night. Imagine that. 14 of our days of daylight. And then 14 of our days of darkness. Over and over. Forever. The daylight is hard enough, but it is the night that threatens to kill everything. During that long lunar night, with no sun at all to warm the surface, the temperature falls and keeps falling until it drops to more than 300 degrees below zero on the Fahrenheit scale. That is a cold so deep it is difficult to even picture. It is far colder than the worst night ever recorded at the South Pole of the Earth. Colder than anything a human being has ever stood in and survived. And in that cold, without some source of heat, every machine simply freezes solid. Metal grows brittle. Fluids turn to stone. Electronics, the delicate brains of every rover and instrument, go dark. And the cruel truth is that they usually do not come back to life when the distant sun finally rises again 2 weeks later. A frozen machine is, more often than not, a dead machine. So how do you keep something warm through 2 weeks of darkness? On a world with no fuel to burn and no plug to connect to sunlight alone cannot do it, because for half of every lunar cycle there is no sunlight at all. The answer NASA reaches for is one of the oldest and strangest tricks in all of spaceflight. And it is the very same trick that has kept the distant Voyager probes alive for nearly 50 years in the deep cold beyond the planets. The answer is to carry a tiny, gentle source of heat that needs no sun and no flame at all. The answer is to use the warmth that comes from a slowly decaying piece of radioactive metal. Let me explain that gently, because it sounds more alarming than it is. Certain heavy materials, such as a metal called plutonium, are naturally unstable. Over time, atom by atom, they break down. And as they break down, they release a steady, quiet trickle of heat. Not a fire, not an explosion, just a warmth. The way a stone left in the sun stays warm long after the light has gone. Except this warmth lasts not for an evening, but for decades. A device built to capture that heat is called a radioisotope thermal generator. And it is, in the simplest terms, a small, everlasting hand warmer for a machine. NASA will use these to keep its precious equipment from freezing solid through the long lunar night, so that when morning finally comes, the machines are still alive and ready to work. So now we know how the equipment will survive the dark. But what equipment? Exactly. Are we keeping alive out there? This is where the first phase becomes truly delightful, because NASA has a radical and almost playful idea for exploring the moon. They want to send drones, not the small spinning drones you might fly in a park, but something far stranger. A flying machine built for a world with almost no air at all. They call this new vehicle Moonfall. A normal drone here on Earth flies by spinning propellers that push against the air. But the moon has no air to push against. So propellers would be useless, spinning uselessly in the empty dark. So Moonfall does something else. It is based on the design of a tiny helicopter called Ingenuity, a real machine that actually flew, against all expectation, in the thin air of Mars. The first craft ever to fly under its own power on another world. But where Ingenuity had blades, Moonfall has small rocket thrusters. It does not fly so much as it leaps, firing its little engines to hurl itself up and over the landscape in great soaring hops. Each hop lasts about 150 seconds, a little over 2 minutes in the air, and in that single leap, it can cover a distance of around 30 miles before settling back down. And the reason for these leaping rocket drones is beautiful. The most interesting places on the moon are often the most dangerous and unreachable. The tops of jagged mountains, the crumbling edges of deep craters, the shadowed pits where no rover could ever safely drive. A wheeled vehicle would have to find a slow and careful path around such obstacles, if it could reach them at all. But Moonfall can simply jump. It can vault over a cliff, soar across a chasm, and land on a ridge that no machine has ever touched. Scout it, and leap away again. It turns the broken and forbidding landscape of the moon into something a small, brave machine can hop across like stepping stones in a stream. While the drones leap from peak to peak, another machine will be crawling slowly and steadily across the ground. And this one has been waiting a very long time for its turn. It is a rover called VIPER, about the size of a golf cart. And the patient story of VIPER is a quiet little drama all its own. The machine was already built, already tested, fully ready to go. And then, for years, it sat waiting for a ride to the moon that kept being delayed. a finished explorer with nowhere to explore, gathering a kind of dust of its own here on Earth. Under the new plan, the year 2027 will finally be the year Viper goes home to the moon, carried down on one of the Blue Origin landers. And once it arrives at the South Pole, Viper will begin the most important survey in the whole plan. It will roll across that shadowed land, hunting for the confirmed locations of the water ice we spoke of earlier, and for other valuable materials hidden in the soil, such as hydrogen, oxygen, and rare metals. NASA has a wonderful old word for this work. They call it prospecting, the very same word used by the men and women who once searched the hills of the American West for gold. Viper is a prospector, and the moon is the new frontier. And the treasure it seeks is not gold, but something far more precious to a traveler, which is the water and air and fuel that could one day make a settlement possible. Mapping exactly where those resources lie will become absolutely critical when the final phase arrives. Viper will not be alone on the surface. It will be joined by two larger vehicles, a kind of lunar truck, one of them driven by the human crew when they visit, and the other able to drive itself, alone, with no one aboard, guided from afar or by its own quiet intelligence. Each of these vehicles can cover an enormous range across the lunar surface, around 560 miles, far more than any of the little carts the Apollo astronauts once drove. And they are not only for sightseeing, they are workers. They will haul equipment from place to place, and they will level the rough ground, smoothing and flattening the chosen site, preparing the foundation for the construction that is to come. Before you build a house, you must first prepare the land, and these patient machines are the first to break ground on a world that has never been built upon. There is a hidden enemy in all of this work, and it is worth knowing about, because it is so small and so strange. It is the dust. We tend to imagine moon dust as something like soft sand on a beach, but it is nothing of the kind, because there is no wind and no water on the moon to smooth it. Every tiny grain stays jagged and sharp, broken into needle-fine points by all those ages of tiny meteorite strikes. The Apollo astronauts learned this the hard way. The dust clung to everything. It worked its way into the joints of their suits and the seals of their equipment. It scratched their visors and wore down their gloves and got into the cabin when they came back inside, where it smelled, they said, faintly of gunpowder, and made their eyes water and their throats catch. It is abrasive and clinging and electrically charged, and over time it grinds away at machinery the way nothing on Earth quite does. So the diggers and the rovers and the suits of the new plan must all be built to live with this fine, sharp dust, to keep it out of the places that matter, to keep moving through a powder that wants to wear them down. It is one of those quiet, unglamorous problems that often decides whether a great dream lives or dies, and the planners know it well. And high above all of this activity, a new web of satellites will be circling the moon. These are the eyes and ears of the whole operation, a network for communication and observation. They will allow a steady stream of information to flow from any spot on the lunar surface all the way back to the Earth, carrying data at a rate of around 500 megabytes every second, fast enough to send not just numbers and measurements, but rich, living detail. And they will keep a constant watch over the entire surface of the moon from above, so that nothing happens down there without being seen, without being. Now here is a small detail in the plan that turns out to matter enormously to ordinary people, to you and to me. NASA has decided that all of these machines, the leaping drones, the prospecting rover, the lunar trucks, every one of them will be fitted with high-quality cameras. And those cameras will not simply record for the archives. They will stream their journeys back to the Earth, live, for everyone in the world to watch. Think about what that means. You will be able to sit in your own home and watch, in something close to real time. A drone leap over a lunar mountain, or a rover roll into the shadow of a crater that has been dark for billions of years. The moon, for the first time in history, becomes something we can all witness together, not as a grainy memory from long ago, but as a place that is happening right now, before our eyes. And it will not be the work of one nation alone, even as one nation leads the race. You can already hear it in the names woven through the plan. The pressurized rover, that apartment on wheels, is being built across an ocean by the Space Agency of Japan, together with a famous maker of cars. Other partners and other nations have their own pieces to contribute, their own instruments and modules and expertise gathered around the shared idea that going back to the moon should be something many countries do together rather than a thing one country hoards. There is a quiet hope folded into that. The hope that a frontier so far from all our old quarrels might be a place where we learn a little, to cooperate, to pool our cleverness toward a goal too large for any single people to reach alone. The race is real and the competition is sharp, but so is the partnership, and both can be true at once. That brings us to the second phase, the years from 2029 to 2032. And this is where the plan stops scouting and starts truly building. This phase involves 27 launches and 24 landings, and it includes the first real infrastructure for permanent living, the bones of an actual habitat. The work grows heavier and more ambitious. NASA will deliver 6 new rovers during this phase, but these are not the gentle explorers of Phase 1. These are machines built for excavation, for digging and moving and shaping the moon itself. They can push and pile up rock, level the ground over wide areas, and carve trenches into the surface to lay down power cables and pipelines. This is no longer exploration. This is construction. We are building the foundation for everything that is to come. And one of these new arrivals is among the most charming machines in the entire plan, a vehicle that turns the cold idea of a moon base into something warm and almost cozy. It is the first pressurized mobile habitat, which is a long way of saying a home on wheels. It is being developed by the Japanese Space Agency in partnership with the car maker Toyota, a company that knows a thing or two about building vehicles people actually want to live their lives inside. This machine weighs about 33,000 pounds, and it is, in essence, an apartment that can drive across the moon. Picture the life inside it, because the cabin holds its own air at a comfortable pressure. The astronauts within do not need to wear their bulky spacesuits. They can move around in ordinary clothing, in shirts with short sleeves, relaxed and at ease, while outside the windows, the most hostile landscape imaginable rolls slowly past. The vehicle travels at a gentle pace, only about 2.25 miles per hour, slower than a person walking briskly, but it can keep going like that for days on end, carrying its crew across vast stretches of the surface in real comfort. It is designed to last for 10 years and to keep its occupants alive and warm for up to 150 hours in total darkness. Riding out a portion of that terrible lunar night within a moving, glowing bubble of home, a small apartment, with a kitchen of sorts and a place to sleep, wandering across the face of the moon. There is something deeply lovely about that image. An ordinary domestic warmth carried into the most extraordinary place. But all of this living and digging and driving demands far more power than the simple heaters of the first phase. So the second phase brings energy on a new scale, and it comes in two forms. The first is the sun. Solar panels will be raised up on top of tall poles, lifted high to catch as much of that low skimming sunlight as possible, drinking in the light during the long lunar day. And because the day is followed by that long dark night, the energy they gather will be poured into great banks of batteries. Storehouses of electricity saved up to carry the base through the darkness when the panels can give nothing. And the sun alone is not enough, so it is joined by the power of the atom. NASA will deliver nuclear fission reactors to the surface of the moon. This is a step beyond the small decaying hand warmers of Phase 1. A fission reactor does not merely keep a single machine from freezing, it generates real electricity, enough to supply many systems at once. A steady current that does not care whether the sun is up or down, whether it is the height of the lunar day or the dead middle of the 2-week night. It is worth dwelling on why the atom matters so much here, because it answers the single hardest problem of living on the moon. Everything we have described depends on power. The heaters that keep the cold at bay, the machines that split water into air and fuel, the lights and the radios and the pumps that keep people alive. All of it runs on a steady flow of electricity. On Earth, we hardly think about it, because the power is always there. But on the moon, for 2 weeks at a stretch, the sun simply goes away, and with it, any hope of solar power. Batteries can carry you part of the way, but storing enough energy to run an entire base through 14 days of darkness would take a mountain of them. A nuclear reactor solves this with quiet elegance. It does not need the sun. It does not need fuel hauled up by the ton. It splits the atoms of a small amount of heavy metal and turns that into a warm, reliable hum of power that goes on through the longest night without complaint. It is, in a sense, a small, captured star, brought down and set upon the gray dust, glowing steadily where the real sun cannot reach. With sunlight gathered into batteries and the atom humming away in the dark, the base will at last have the constant, reliable power that living requires. And by the time this second phase draws to a close, everything will be in place to support human beings living on the moon, not for a quick visit, but for long stretches of time. Which brings us, at last, to the third phase, and to the moment we move in. This phase covers everything from the year 2033 onward, and its great highlight is the thing this entire story has been building toward: the permanent habitation of the Artemis moon base. NASA projects that they can keep a rotating crew of 4 people living on the moon for 28 days at a stretch, a full lunar cycle, through one complete turn of day and night. The people will not be camping in a cramped capsule. They will live in multiple connected modules, joined together into something like a small space station, much as the International Space Station floats joined together in orbit, except that this one rests on solid ground, anchored to the surface of another world. These habitat modules will draw their power directly from their own nuclear fission generator, that steady atomic heartbeat keeping the lights on and the air warm through every long night. And in the beginning, like any remote outpost, the base will need to be supplied from home. Every month, ships will arrive carrying roughly 17,500 pounds of food, water, and air, the basic necessities of staying alive, ferried across 240,000 miles of empty space to keep 4 people breathing and fed at the bottom of the moon. It is an extraordinary logistical effort, a supply line stretched farther than any in human history. Try, for a moment, to imagine an ordinary day inside that base, because it is a gentle thing to picture as you drift towards sleep. 4 people, far from home, moving quietly through connected rooms that glow with soft light against the black outside. There is no morning sun to wake them, because the lunar day and night pay no attention to a human clock, so they keep Earth time instead. Their own private rhythm of waking and resting carried with them from a world they cannot quite see. They eat their meals together, floating a little with every step in the gentle gravity, where a body weighs only 1/6 of what it does at home, and a careless movement can lift you off the floor. They check the instruments. They speak with the earth across a delay of more than a second, every word taking its small journey out and the answer taking its small journey back. They look out through thick windows at a landscape that does not change, the same craters, the same shadows, the same unblinking stars. And at the end of their working hours, they sleep. 4 small, warm lives tucked inside a bright bubble of air, on a world that has been silent and empty for 4.5 billion years. Until now. But here's the part that turns a visit into a true settlement. The part where the moon begins, slowly, to provide for itself. Outside the base, NASA will begin what they call in situ resource utilization, which is a grand phrase for a simple and ancient idea, living off the land. It means harvesting the rock and the soil that lie all around and using them, rather than hauling everything you need across the void. This is where all that patient prospecting by Viper finally pays off. The water ice hidden in the floors of those shadowed craters will be gathered and warmed, and the water drawn out of it. And then that water will be split apart into its 2 pieces, the oxygen becoming air for the crew to breathe, and the hydrogen becoming fuel to burn. The moon begins to make its own air and its own fuel from the frozen ground. And the long supply line from Earth begins, just a little, to loosen its grip. And NASA reaches even further than that. They will begin to experiment with a kind of building that sounds almost like magic, which is printing structures out of the moon itself. They will take the fine gray dust of the surface, the same dust that has coated everything since the beginning, and melt it down with great heat into a thick, pourable substance, a sort of lunar cement. And with that cement, layer upon layer, they intend to build the first genuinely permanent structures ever raised on another world. Not modules carried up from Earth and bolted together, but walls and shelters grown from the ground they stand on, made of the moon by machines. For the people who will live there, it is the difference between pitching a tent and laying the first stone of a town. And think of where that road might lead, given enough patient years. The same printed walls that begin as a single shelter could one day become landing pads that do not throw up clouds of that dangerous dust. Then roads, then storehouses, then thicker walls heaped over with loose soil to shield the people inside from the radiation that pours unfiltered through the airless sky. A place that began as 4 visitors in connected cans might slowly, over decades, become something a person could honestly call a settlement. With structures that were never launched from Earth at all, but were quarried and melted and shaped from the moon by the steady work of machines. We are not there yet, and no honest plan pretends otherwise. But every great town that has ever stood once began with a single foundation laid in empty ground. And this is that, the very first foundation, on the oldest empty ground there is. Now, if some quiet part of you has been listening to all of this and thinking that it sounds nearly impossible, then I want you to know that you are not wrong, and you are in very good company. NASA itself has admitted, openly, that what they are trying to do is very nearly impossible. The cold, the dark, the distance, the cost, the sheer difficulty of building a home on a dead and airless world, all of it is almost beyond reach. But here is the remarkable thing. That impossibility is not a reason to stop. It is, in a strange way, the entire point. There is an old echo here, a famous one, more than 60 years ago. In the year 1962, a young American president stood before a crowd in the warm air of Texas and explained why his nation had chosen to go to the moon. "We choose to go," he said, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Because that goal will serve to gather and measure the best of our energies and our skills. The new plan carries that same spirit forward across the decades. We are not doing this because it is easy, the planners say, but because it is hard. And the rival nation, China, is fully prepared to attempt hard and nearly impossible things of its own. These are the true stakes of the new race. Good enough is no longer good enough. The moon will belong, in some real sense, to whoever is willing to do the hard thing first, and do it well. And now we arrive at the secret at the center of the whole story, the thing that is stranger than any drone or reactor or printed wall. Because if you ask what the real purpose of this enormous effort is, the honest answer is not what you might expect. The real purpose is not, at its deepest level, to build a moon base at all. The base is the means, not the end. The true imperative, the thing that matters most, is to inspire, to light a fire in the next generation, to reach the young people who are children right now. Watching those live streams of rovers crossing the gray dust, and to fill them with the belief that they could one day do things that we, today, would honestly call impossible. Because those children are the ones who will actually build the future. Not the people drawing up the plans today, but the ones who are inspired by them. The ones who grow up with the moon as a real and present place, rather than an old story from before they were born. And here is the gentle worry hidden inside the hope. Those children will never reach for the impossible if nothing ever shows them that reaching is even worth trying. Inspiration is not automatic. It has to be lit. It is NASA's job. The planners believe to lead by example, to do the brave and difficult thing in full view of the world. And for a very long time, they had not been doing that job at all. The fire had gone out. And the deepest meaning of this whole plan is that, at last, someone is striking the match again. Let us pause here for a moment and simply feel the size of what we have been describing. Without any numbers at all, a world that has hung in our sky since before there were eyes to see it. A cold gray sphere that guided our ancestors and measured out their months. For almost all of human history, untouchable. Then, for one brief, astonishing window, touched, and then left alone again for 50 long years. And now, in our own time, a plan to go back, not to visit, but to live, to carry warmth into a place of unimaginable cold, to draw water from shadows that have not seen the sun since before the dinosaurs, to build homes out of dust, and to do it all not for conquest, in the end, but to show a watching child that the impossible is only a thing that has not been done yet. There's a kind of patience woven through this whole story that I find deeply calming, and I hope you do too. None of this happens quickly. It unfolds over 7 years of careful building, phase after phase, foundation before walls, scouting before digging, supplies from home before the slow learning to live off the land. It is the patience of people planting trees whose shade they may never sit in. The scientists and engineers who draw these plans tonight know that some of the children they hope to inspire are not even born yet. They are working for a future they are content to glimpse, but not to own. There is something quietly beautiful in that. A generosity stretched across decades. A gift handed forward through time to people whose faces they will never see. And there is comfort, too, in how small and slow it all is against the great age of the moon. The moon has been circling for 4.5 billion years. It watched the first single living cells stir in the warm seas of the young Earth. It hung over the slow ages of the dinosaurs and saw them come and go. It looked down on the first creatures who ever lifted their eyes and wondered what it was. Against all of that, 7 years of building is nothing at all. The blink of an eye, a single breath in a life that has no end in sight. And yet, within that blink, something genuinely new is happening, something that has never happened in all those billions of years. For the first time, the gray world is being made ready, not for a visit, but for a home. There is no need to rush toward it tonight. It is unfolding at exactly the pace it needs, patient as the moon itself. And it will still be unfolding long after you have closed your eyes and let this gentle night carry you away. And it matters, in the end, for reasons that reach all the way back down to the ground beneath your feet. A foothold on the moon is a first step toward learning whether human beings can truly live away from the Earth at all. Whether we can carry our small warmth and our fragile breath out into the cold and make it last. It is a rehearsal for journeys even longer, to Mars and beyond, a proving ground close enough to home that a mistake need not be the end of everything. What we learn at the South Pole of the moon about water and air and shelter and survival is knowledge that belongs to all of us, gathered for the whole human family, streamed back live for anyone in the world to watch. The moon becomes, once again, what it always was, a thing we all share. Only now we are reaching out to touch it together. Think about why the moon makes such a wise first step, rather than leaping straight for Mars, that red world so many dream of. The moon is close. It is only about 3 days away, near enough that if something goes badly wrong, help and supplies and even a way home are within reach. Mars is another matter entirely, a journey not of days, but of many months. So far that a cry for help would take many minutes to even arrive, and a rescue would be all but impossible. So we practice here first, in the deep cold and the long dark and the clinging dust, where the lessons are hard but survivable. We learn how to pull water from frozen ground and air from water and shelter from dust. We learn what breaks and what holds, what a body does over weeks of low gravity, how people fare living 4 to a room 250,000 miles from everyone they love. And every lesson learned on the moon is a life that might be saved later, much farther out, on the long road to somewhere even more distant. The moon is not the destination. It is the place where we learn how to leave. So let us gather the whole story up now, gently, and lay it out one more time from the beginning, in a soft and simple form, so that you can let the details go and keep only the shape of it. It begins with a pale light in the sky, the moon, about 240,000 miles away, watched by every person who has ever lived. It begins with 12 human beings who walked there long ago, between 1969 and 1972, and then, with 50 years of silence in which the footprints stayed, but the visitors stopped. It begins with a quiet discovery in the dark. Water ice frozen into the floors of craters at the South Pole. Craters that have not seen sunlight in billions of years. Water that could become air to breathe and fuel to burn, turning a dead rock into a place where someone might live. Then comes the moment of change. In the spring of 2026, when a man named Jared Isaacman stands before a single glowing word, ignition, and admits that the old way was broken, and names the reason it must change now. A great race with China not for flags this time, but to stay. Then comes the new plan. Humble and clever, turning a reckless leap into a careful rehearsal in orbit close to home, opening the contest between two rival landers so that whoever can truly deliver will be the one to carry people down. Then comes the speed, a return to the old golden tempo, landings in 2027 and 2028, a crew arriving once every 6 months. The moon orbiting station set aside so that all effort can pour into the surface itself. Then come the 3 great phases. First, the scouting, the steady road through space, the leaping rocket drones called Moonfall, the patient prospector Viper hunting for ice, the lunar trucks leveling the ground, the satellites overhead, and the cameras streaming all of it home for the whole world to see. Then the building, the heavy diggers carving trenches, the apartment on wheels built with Toyota where astronauts ride in shirt sleeves, the solar panels on tall poles, and the nuclear reactors humming in the dark, until everything is in place for people to stay. And then, at last, the moving in. 4 people living for 28 days at a time in connected modules on solid ground, supplied from Earth at first, then slowly learning to draw water from the ice and air, from the water and walls, from the dust, building the first permanent structures ever raised on another world. And under all of it, the real secret, that the base was never truly the point, that the point was to light a fire in a child who is watching, to lead by example, to do the hard thing in full view of the world, so that someone young enough to spend their whole life on it will believe the impossible is worth reaching for. Not because it is easy, because it is hard. That is the whole story. And you can let every number and every date and every machine drift away now. And keep only this. We are going back to the moon. And this time, we are going to stay. And we are doing it in the end. For the ones who come after. You have come a long way tonight, all the way to the moon and back. And there is nothing left for you to do now but rest. There is nothing to remember. You do not need to hold on to a single fact. Not the phases, not the dates, not the names of the machines. Let them all go soft and loose, like sand slipping through open fingers, and let them drift away into the dark. They will keep without you. The work is finished for tonight, and none of it is yours to carry. Let your attention settle gently down into your body now. Feel the weight of your limbs growing heavier, sinking softly into whatever holds you, as if you too were drifting down through the long lunar night toward a warm and waiting place. Let the small muscles of your face unclench. Let your jaw loosen. Let the space between your eyebrows go smooth and still. There is no expression you need to hold. Let your shoulders drop, lower than you thought they could, away from your ears, releasing a tension you may not even have known you were keeping. And let your breathing slow, all on its own, with no effort at all, in and out, like a slow tide moving across a quiet shore, coming in and going out, asking nothing of you, each breath a little softer than the one before, each breath carrying you a little deeper down into the dark and the warmth. There is nothing to do but breathe, and even that is happening on its own, gently, without you having to try. The day behind you is done. Whatever it held, whatever you carried through it, you can set it down now, all of it, and leave it on the far side of sleep. There is nothing to solve. There is nothing to fix. There is nowhere you need to be. You are safe, and you are warm, and you are exactly where you are meant to be, which is right here, sinking gently into rest, and there is nothing left to listen for now. No more facts, no more numbers, no more far-off worlds to follow. The story is told, and it will keep, quietly, without you holding on to any of it. So let the sound of these words grow soft and distant, like a tide drawing back down a long shore, quieter and quieter, slower and slower. You do not need to follow them anymore. You can simply let them carry you, the way the gentle gravity of the moon would lower you, slowly, slowly, down to a soft and waiting place, down past thought, down past the day, down into the warm dark where nothing is asked of you at all. There is only this breath, and then the next, each one softer, each one slower, each one letting you go a little deeper than the last. Far above you, that pale light is still turning, slow and patient and silent, the way it has turned for 4.5 billion years. The footprints are still there in the gray dust, perfectly still, perfectly safe, waiting in the long quiet for the ones who will come back. And somewhere in the dark of a crater that has not seen the sun since before there was life on Earth, the ancient ice waits too, holding its secret, holding the water that may one day become someone's first breath on another world. It has waited a very long time, and it can wait a little longer. And so can you. There is no hurry anywhere in the whole wide sky tonight. But none of that is yours to think about now. Now, there is only the soft weight of your body, and the slow tide of your breath, and the gentle dark gathering close around you like a blanket pulled up to your chin. Rest now, sleep deeply, and let the gentle dark hold you until morning.